So, by now, you all know about the game that was never released, Simpsons versus Rugrats, and how it was planned to be a whole series with at least one sequel. Not only that, but I'm sure you also know about the incredible storyboard jam and how Rugrats was truly meant to end at one point and how that accidentally aired. Well, did you know also there's a cut character from Rugrats that was removed for being a bit too much? Well, I guess you could call it a character. In reality, this character was going to be a form of another character. That being good old Grandpa Lou. And this character was meant to appear in Simpsons vs. Rugrats 2, being an original creation, kind of like how Corrupted Angelica was going to be, who was inspired by Search for Reptar being glitched out. But even worse, so much so that they couldn't put him at all in the game, and maybe the sole reason why it was never started to begin with. And also, supposedly, there was going to be a special, possibly non-canon episode made to promote this character and hype up his appearance as well as the game sequel. And this episode went into his creation and his backstory, as he's a Grandpa Lou who may be from an alternate universe, or at least shows what could happen. You see, the name for this version of Lou differs. It may depend on the region, perhaps, but overall, they all mean the same thing, and these names can range from names such as Evil Lou, or Dark Lou, or Omen Lou. Yes, an evil version of Grandpa. Now, his appearance was much more like Grandpa Lou, but he was much more nude, missing many of his clothing, with just some underwear mostly covering him up, and perhaps some footwear of some sort. It appears to be fighting tape, maybe perhaps, on his feet and hands. His skin became a much more ominous, glowing, demonic, purplish magenta red, and he has an evil aura surrounding him. He also has much longer and sharper facial hair, with a goatee to boot, and he was much more muscular than the Lou we know, and his voice spoke with an echo and was slightly deeper than his normal one. How could this all happen to Lou, and why? Well, one or three words. CoRruGaTeD BrAn puffs. If you remember an incident in aisle 7, Lou was instructed to go grocery shopping because he wanted the fudgy thingamajiggs. And on the way there, one of the items he was told to get were CoRruGaTeD BrAn puffs. Sounds tasty. Of course, they ultimately opted to get Reptar cereal instead. But despite that, Lou could still not get rid of his spite for CoRruGaTeD BrAn puffs. You may have noticed in the episode just how unusually spiteful he was towards it. Even in the end, when they're accepting to get Search for Reptar cereal instead, he's smiling, but yet you can still hear absolute disgust in the tone of his voice when he says that they're better than corrugated BrAn puffs. It doesn't fit the animation at all. It almost feels like it was coming from a very pure and authentic place from the character himself. And that's exactly where Evil Lou comes from. He comes from a scenario where Grandpa was forced to buy the corrugated BrAn puffs. And this was the final straw for his mental state, as well as any control he has over his dark side. It's the corrugated BrAn puffs that ultimately lead Lou to tap into the Satsuo no Haro, and upon purchasing the corrugated BrAn puffs, Lou screams, and we see him emerge with this dark aura blasting off him, completely destroying the insides of the store and knocking everything over as everyone ducks and covers, and those who are too late get hurt in the process. Apparently they want them to be killed, but they force them to just simply show them being quote-unquote injured while animating the special episode. And we can hear Tommy go like, "Grandpa!" And it seems like he's trying to beg him to keep under control. And he also goes like, "Reptar!" But Reptar's just a cardboard cutout there. He's not going to help you, Tommy. Sorry. Now, Lou still had enough control to not harm the Sprout, and instead jump off, leaving Tommy behind in the grocery store. And this will have been most of what we saw for the episode, except for the bigger teaser at the end. After all, this was for a Simpsons crossover game. And we see Grandpa Lou look into Springfield, Evil Lou, I mean, and wants to spread his darkness upon it over there because of the corrugated BrAn puffs. And it was then where his rival character for the game will have been revealed. Coincidentally, another character who was to be completely cut from the game if it were released, Graggle Simpson. You see, the characters all had some sort of relationships with each other and even rivalries, but despite that, every character had a quote-unquote main rival, and for Grandpa Lou, this would have been Graggle. It's not sure exactly where their story would have gone to, but perhaps Graggle just not tolerating the Satsuo no Haro as much as Lou would like. He also had special interactions with Corrupted Angelica and the rest of the cast. Now, as for why exactly this character got cut, this may seem extreme already, but it doesn't seem like it's bad enough to warrant the character just being completely removed, right? Well, that's where his moveset came into place. As you can probably expect, Grandpa Lou played sort of like normal Lou, except he was much more brutal with his attacks. So much so that apparently they even were to have animated blood with it. Yes, animated blood to show just how much he's lost it. And apparently, while reviewing this, testers and other devs were not only disturbed by the blood, but just simply the animations of his attacks, as well as the reactions to the characters. One of his attacks that were known was Grandpa Lou grabbing and lifting up the opponent by the head with just one hand, and then either going for a neck chop to just completely break their neck and twist their head over, or lifting up one of his feet and kicking them down onto the ground super hard. And apparently the testers saw this move be done to Tommy, and they were left traumatized by this, not only from the looks of it, but they report that the shriek Tommy did from receiving the move sounded like no other in the game or the show. It sounded completely unique and way too real, as they describe. And apparently, the voice actor for Tommy said they don't even remember recording that scream. It was then where they ultimately decided to cut the character from the game. However, as we know, no game in the series ended up being released in the first place, and it's still unknown exactly where their whereabouts are. I even tried to get in touch with some people who were a part of the team for the game, or people who worked on the shows, and upon bringing up Evil Lou, they immediately become cold and seemingly dismissive and upset, and want nothing to do with it, and immediately cut all ties. So, whatever you do, if you ever meet any of these people or do your research, do not bring up CoRruGaTeD BrAn puffs.